Now available, paperback and Kindle Unlimited, ISIS, the main event. It's carnage inside of a steel cage when the goddess next door steps in the squared circle with the beast from the boss in this action-packed all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, the main event, paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. One of my viewers sent me several articles related to racist behavior that UFC fighters have participated in. Now, this viewer wanted me to know more about the racism that went on UFC, and believed since my channel has a lot more views than others, thought this would shine a spotlight on these racists and their racist behavior that they participate in at the UFC. Now, I am no fan of the UFC, and based on what I have seen from these articles, it's looking like a platform for white supremacists to go out here and participate in their racist behavior. Now, the way black people deal with these kinds of racists is once we call them out, we start to reinforce that policy after calling them out and holding them accountable by holding our dollars. Because me sitting there talking about multiple alleged incidents of these individuals who have dropped N-words on platforms like Twitter, or going out here and participating in blackface, yes, that'll get people's attention as related to the whole issue of racism in the UFC. But the best thing we can do to deal with this racism going on in this whole so-called sport of mixed martial arts is to not mix our dollars with these kinds of institutions, because when we mix our dollars with these institutions, what we are sending is a message that we do not deserve respect. And the way we take our respect from racists like those who are a part of the UFC is to go out here and take our dollars and keep them in our pockets, because that's how we deal with racists in the UFC. That is how we have an impact on their sport. So since they don't want us in their sport, then we keep our dollars out of their tills. Because when we keep our dollars out of their tills, what we do is send a message that if we cannot receive the tangible of respect, then you do not get the tangible of our dollars. Because me going out here and talking about how one UFC star, Mike Perry, went out here and called actor Michael J. White an N-word, or talk about how another UFC guy dropped a lot of tweets with the N-word because he said he grew up hanging out with blacks. Well, me making videos talking about all of these different alleged incidents, this doesn't really help anything. But if we really want to have an impact on the UFC, we black Americans, we have to go out here and not spend our money with an institution that clearly shows how anti-black it is by going out here and making excuses and enabling fighters who go out here and willfully and intentionally participate in anti-black racism and are a part of a culture of anti-black racism. So since they are anti-black, we just go out here and take our black dollars and spend them with black-owned businesses like SJS Direct. And when we go out here and spend our money with a black business, we send a message that if we cannot receive respect, then they don't get our dollars. Because to me, yes, your UFC is proving to me that it is a white supremacist institution, no matter what your Dana White says about it, because when you have multiple fighters participating in anti-black racism, making racist statements on social media, and never being held accountable, then that sends a message to me that the UFC really isn't concerned with going out here and dealing with the racism that is seeming to be a part of the culture of the UFC. And since they're not interested in going out here and dealing with the culture of racist fighters who go out here and drop the N-word and go out here and put on things like blackface, or have family members, like in Conor McGregor's case, putting on blackface, then we need to not put our black asses in their seats and go out here and let them know that they can go out here and participate in their racism, but they're not going to get any of our black dollars. And I really wouldn't want to spend any of my money with the UFC, because the UFC is a barbaric sport, and it's filled with a lot of your bottom-feeding savages. And these bottom-feeding savages, they can go out here and fight each other in that barbaric sport that they call mixed martial arts, when really, as I see it, it's just a sport where a lot of guys who are feeling inferior because they couldn't compete in actual martial arts, they couldn't compete in boxing, they come to the UFC because the UFC is of a lower tier, and that's possibly why they're attracting all of these different races, because many of these guys just could not cut it in the professional boxing leagues. They couldn't cut it in martial arts, where there are rules and structure, and you have to have strong discipline to be a part of those leagues, and you have to go out here and participate in some type of sportsmanship. So these individuals, they can't cut it in in your karate martial arts. They can't cut it in boxing, and they just don't have the face for optics as related to those sports. And because they're not anybody thinks is a face for their sport, they've got to come down several pegs to the UFC sewer. And as they're in that sewer, they're showing me why I wouldn't want to go see any fight in a cage, because it seems like there's just animals who go to that cage and go out here and participate in their anti-black racism. And since they want to go out here and be anti-black, then I can go out here and take my black dollars and spend them at a black-owned business rather than watch this savagery called mixed martial arts. So, as I see it, I know the viewer wanted me to talk about the racism going on here, but I would rather focus on solutions, because the solution we have for dealing with this kind of racist is that we have economic power, and if we have power over our dollar, we take that power we have over our dollar and we spend it with those who will show us our respect. If the people in a certain sport don't show us any sort of respect, then we don't go out here and spend time with them. And as I see it, I've got no time to watch human cockfighting, because that's basically what this is at the UFC plantation. It's no different than watching Chicken George in Roots with his roosters. And that's what basically any black person who is in this whole octagon is. They are basically being like Chicken George, going out there doing the work of the slave master. And since we are free, I have the free time and the free money not to waste it on this UFC, because if this UFC, again, is wanting to be a racist institution, then to let the racists go out here and spend their money with the UFC, because they're sitting there, they don't like black people. Okay, you don't like black people, you want to be a bunch of racists, then I am not going to deal with these racists. Yes, I will call the racists out, but I would say that the way we have an impact on that sport is to go out here and show that we are above this sport in terms of our character, in terms of our integrity, and have some dignity, because when we go out here and have our dignity and our respect, this is how we deal with these kinds of racists, by saying that we are valuable enough not to go out here and spend time with racists and white supremacists, because if racists and white supremacists don't want to go out here and show themselves, okay, I'm going to show myself the door, and once I show myself the door, I'm going to leave these guys behind, because I know I deserve better than watching two people brutalize each other inside of an octagon. And again, it's really embarrassing to watch a black man go into the octagon with people who are racist and white supremacists, like this Sean Strickland, who says, oh, I went through a white supremacist phase. No, you don't go through a white supremacist phase. You are a white supremacist, as I see it. And you don't grow out of white supremacy because that's a culture you learned from your mother. And since you learned that culture from your mother, it's not something that's going to go away. And when it comes down to these kinds of racists, again, the response black people need to have is, we don't need any UFC. No, we don't need to go into a sport where they're brutalizing each other. No, that's something white racists do because they feel inferior. And since they feel inferior and cannot compete in sports where black people dominate, like your martial arts, I believe, and your boxing and other sports, they need to go to this sort of UFC playground where they can feel superior because they don't have to have any sort of code or any sort of rules. But we, foundational black Americans, we must get on code. And once we get on code, we deal with these kinds of racists, not by going out here and continuing to complain about them, but we go out here and after we call them out, we cash out and do not spend another dime with these kinds of people. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video, you can donate to the Patreon, the PayPal, or preferably the Cash App for $15 or more. And if I know something about that subject, I will make that video for you. And if you want to pick up some of my positive black fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like ISIS the Main Event and ISIS the Ultimate Fight, two of the three stories in the Nemesis storyline, you can find all those stories on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find these stories at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And that's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Samurai Goddess. The Goddess Next Door takes on Kung Fu killers in this action-packed martial arts ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, Samurai Goddess in paperback and e-readers today.